Please pray with me. Lord, open our hearts to hear your word. Help us to live out this teaching from 14th century mystic Teresa of Avila. Christ has no body now on earth but yours, no hands but yours, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which Christ's compassion is to look out to the world. Yours are the feet with which Christ is to go about doing good. Yours are the hands with which Christ is to bless all people now. Amen. Our Old Testament reading comes from Jeremiah chapter 33, which you might have heard earlier in the service already. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise I made to the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days and at that time I will cause a righteous branch to spring up for David, and he shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In those days Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will dwell securely. And this is the name by which it will be called: the Lord is our righteousness. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. During this season of Advent, we are preparing, as we do every year, to celebrate the coming of Jesus Christ. Even though prophets foretold the coming of a king, we will be reminded that he was a Prince of Peace. He did not seek personal power and privilege and lived a life of both economic and social poverty. Remember when he was chased out of his own hometown? However, as Jeremiah tells us, Jesus was the branch to spring up for David and reign with justice and righteousness. Justice and righteousness play a significant role in our Matthew 25 calling to eliminate systemic poverty. In both English and ancient Hebrew, these words are used interchangeably or to define each other, but there are slight differences in meaning. Biblically, justice means to do not only what is right according to laws, but also to restore relationships, people, or communities back to wholeness. Righteousness is usually an attribute used to describe the goodness and correctness of God. When applied to people, it means that they are right with God or doing what God wishes. With these definitions, we see that poverty, or a lacking of both monetary resources and spiritual nourishment, is inherently unjust and unrighteous. These are not particularly easy topics to discuss, but Christ is our example, and he did not shy away from unsettling conversations. Given the fact that we have committed to a vision of being inclusive and Christ-centered, I think we are brave enough to start. So, how do we strive to restore communities living in poverty? We begin by acknowledging the unbalance of opportunity or injustice that skews towards benefiting white, straight, cisgendered Christian folks at the expense of others. I am by no means an expert on these topics. I am a white cradle Christian who has lived a privileged life with a modicum of financial stability and access to excellent education and social services. But I am a gay woman who presents the stories of people of color as part of my job, and those aspects of my daily life influence what messages resonate with me and what I am going to share with you today. Sometimes we Christians get caught up in judging our own value based on how we follow God's commands and how we hold others to the same account. But merely following and enforcing rules doesn't make one just or righteous. I think a key insight into a more foundational truth comes from 2 chapters earlier in Matthew chapter 23. One of the teachers of the law asked Jesus what the greatest commandment or law was. And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like the first, love your neighbor as yourself." This, I think, is key. Love must be the foundation for justice and righteousness, not the other way around. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. explained during his 1955 Montgomery bus boycott speech that justice is really love in calculation. Justice is love correcting that which revolts against love. Dr. King encourages us to enliven the biblical definition of justice, one that restores. How do we restore? Courtney Ariel writes in her article, "For our white folks desiring to be allies," that this involves listening to people who are marginalized or disenfranchised and allowing them to be the authors of their own justice. It involves stepping away from the microphone and allowing them to speak for themselves. It involves educating ourselves about communities and systems that are not familiar with us. And it involves providing assistance when people ask for it. Restoration comes from a relationship, and that rarely builds from a single monetary gift or weekend mission trip. As Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, may his memory be a blessing, explains, the measure of our righteousness lies in how many people we value, not how many we condemn. So when our Native friends tell us that a cartoon mascot wearing a headdress hurts their children's self-esteem, we change the mascot. When our teachers ask for equitable pay and resources for their classroom, we provide them. When 30 to 48% of queer youth are rejected by their family, we become their family. This was the work of Christ with the tax collector, the sex worker, the chronically ill. He listened, he loved, he helped. Ariel continues, I believe that this is holy work, the work of justice, the pursuit of it. You're going to make mistakes, expect this, but keep showing up. Be compassionate, lead with empathy always. Keep learning and growing. If you do this, I truly believe you will be doing the work of an ally. If you want to learn more about Christ's desire for just and righteous radical love through the eyes of gifted trans, bi, Black, and Native thinkers, please seek out the writings and podcasts of Megan Rohr, Nadia Bowles-Weber, Cole Arthur Riley, Caitlin Curtis, Howard Thurman, and James H. Cohn, who deserve credit for much of what I shared with you today. Lord, help us do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with you. Amen.